When you hear the words supreme leader, what comes to mind? For many people, it's a title pulled straight from popular culture. Maybe it's Kylo Ren from Star Wars, ruling a galaxy through fear, loyalty, and absolute authority.
Our supreme leader is dead. We have no ruler.
The supreme leader is dead.
Maybe it's Admiral General Aladdin from The Dictator, a satirical caricature of unchecked power wrapped in military uniforms and giant portraits.
Where is nuclear Nadal? You had Nadal executed, Supreme Leader. Why did I do that?
Popular culture has conditioned us to associate the term with strongmen, authoritarianism, and larger-than-life rulers whose authority seems almost mythical. Yet beyond the world of cinema and satire, and since art imitates life, there exists a real supreme leader at the center of one of the most influential states in modern West Asia. The supreme leader of Iran occupies a position unlike almost any other political office in the world. He's not merely a president, monarch, military commander, or religious figure. He represents a fusion of all four. His authority is rooted in both constitutional law and theological doctrine that seeks to answer a question that has existed within Twelver Shi'a Islam for more than 1,000 years. The result is perhaps the most complete example of a modern theocratic state, a system where religious legitimacy and political authority are woven together into a single institution. To understand how such a position came to exist, we must travel back through centuries of Iranian history, Shia theology, revolution, and political transformation. The idea of leadership that eventually became the supreme leader of Iran has deep historical and religious roots that stretch back into the 16th century. At that point in history, kings were often seen as protectors of both the state and the faith, with legitimacy tied to a higher moral or divine order. After the Islamic conquest of Persia, that was then followed by the establishment of the Safavid dynasty, Iran became the major center of Twelver Shi'a Islam, which introduced a new theological framework for authority. In Twelver Shi'a belief, leadership is centered on a line of 12 Imams, who are considered divinely appointed guides. The 12th Imam, known as Imam al-Mahdi, is believed to be in occultation, meaning he is hidden and will return at the end of time. His absence created a central question for Shia scholars: who leads the community in his place? Out of this question emerged the concept of Wilayat al Faqih, or the guardianship of the Islamic jurist. This idea holds that qualified Islamic scholars should guide the community in religious and legal matters during the Imam's absence. For many centuries, this role remained largely religious and advisory. Clerics issued rulings, guided personal conduct, and interpreted Islamic law.
What is your own role in this government that is to come?
I would not have any position in the future government as such, being the president or a prime minister. I will be some sort of supervising their activities. I will give them guidance, and if I see some deviation or some mistake, I will remind them how to correct it, give the general guidance.
In the late 20th century, Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini developed a new interpretation of Wilayat al Faqih. He argued that the guardianship of jurists should extend beyond religious practice and into full political authority. In his view, an Islamic government required a supreme religious jurist to oversee the state and ensure that laws and governance aligned with Islamic principles. This idea became the foundation of the 1979 Iranian Revolution. In his many lectures, later published on as the book Islamic Government, he argued that jurists were not only interpreters of religion, but also the rightful leaders of the state. As he put it, the governance of the faqih is a continuation of the governance of the Prophet. After the revolution, the role of supreme leader was created and embedded deeply within Iran's constitution. This marked a major transformation from a primarily religious authority into political rule with control over the state, military, and key institutions. It represented the shift from clerical guidance of a believing community to a theocratic leadership governing an entire nation.
You would be, in effect, the strong man of Iran.
به این ترتیب شما مرد قوی ایران خواهید بود.
اینطور فرض کنید.
You may assume so.
In the present structure of the Islamic Republic of Iran, the supreme leader operates as the central coordinator of the state's strategic direction, where competing institutions are ultimately aligned under one overarching framework, including being the highest authority above the president and parliament, combining religious leadership as the guardian of Islamic legitimacy, political leadership as the ultimate decision maker, and military control as the commander of all armed forces. To select the supreme leader, a mechanism exists that is carried out by a very specialized clerical council, whose members are themselves filtered through eligibility standards that assesses both scholarly authority and political reliability. This process is designed to ensure that candidates for leadership emerge from a very narrow field of religious expertise that is considered capable of understanding the system's theological foundations. Within Twelver Shi'a beliefs specific to Iran, this arrangement is generally understood as a safeguard against fragmentation in the absence of divinely guided leadership. Rather than viewing authority as purely administrative, it's to be interpreted as a stabilizing force, preserving coherence in religious interpretation and socio-political order. A way to prevent divergence in moral direction. Just to refocus our context a little, there have ever only been 3 supreme leaders. The first Khomeini and then Ali Khamenei, and only recently Khamenei's son Mujtaba has taken over as the 3rd supreme leader. Please check out our new course on how to navigate Arab identity in today's world, how to define and pinpoint yourself within the various tensions found in the duality of tradition and modernity, the foundations that make us unique, even our contradictions. Unapologetically Arab is a 13-chapter course intent on helping anyone interested in appreciating what it means to be an Arab. Join now by clicking on the link in the video description at either Thinkific or Patreon, and begin your empowering journey of Arab discovery. Outside Iran, Khomeini's concept of Wilayat al Faqih is not experienced as a unified system of authority, but rather as one interpretation among several within Twelver Shi'a thought. In many Shia communities across South Asia, the Gulf, and parts of Africa, religious life has historically been shaped by independent clerical networks rather than a single centralized political doctrine. Scholars and believers often continue to follow different sources of emulation, particularly those based in Najaf, Iraq, which has long been a competing intellectual center to the Iranian hub of Qom. A key point of divergence is the political extension of clerical authority. Ayatollah Ali Sistani, the highest-ranking Iraqi Twelver Shi'a cleric, has maintained a model where clerical authority is primarily moral and legal, rather than governing. The role of the cleric is to guide society, without direct rule over the state. This difference has produced a gradual ideological split within global Twelver communities. In countries such as Pakistan and India, Shia populations largely maintain religious loyalty to independent seminaries and don't treat Iranian clerical authority as binding. The Iranian-American academic Vali Nasr summarizes this consequence clearly. Khomeini's innovation reshaped Shia identity politics, creating both alignment and deep fractures across communities. In Bahrain and Saudi Arabia, where Shia communities exist within Sunni-ruled states, Wilayat al Faqih is often viewed through a political lens rather than a religious obligation, and acceptance varies widely depending on local conditions. At the same time, limited alignment does exist. In Lebanon, groups such as Hezbollah explicitly recognize the authority of Iran's supreme leader in political and religious terms. Overall, the politicization of Wilayat al Faqih has contributed to a fragmentation of authority, where Twelver Shi'a identity remains shared theologically, but divided in terms of political allegiance and institutional direction. In the near future, the trajectory of Wilayat al Faqih will likely be shaped less by theological reinvention and more by political continuity and institutional resilience. Within Iran's current political system, the doctrine is too deeply embedded in constitutional structures, security institutions, and the broader ideological identity of the state. This makes an immediate reversal towards its earlier, more limited religious interpretation unlikely. At the same time, the doctrine is not static. Over the decades since 1979, its practical expression has already shifted in response to internal pressures, generational change, and evolving geopolitical realities. Economic challenges, social transformation, and exposure to global norms have created ongoing debates within Iranian society about the balance between religious oversight and administrative governance. As a result, the most likely short-term outcome is not structural replacement, but slow and gradual adaptation. Whether Wilayat al Faqih ultimately reverts to a purely religious doctrine or expands further will depend on long-term shifts in authority, public legitimacy, and institutional cohesion. But this is a real possibility. I'm quite confident that the 2026 US-Israel versus Iran conflict has left a major imprint on the latest iteration of this doctrine. More or less clerical power consolidation? I'm not sure. This is yet to be seen. Khomeini's legacy extends far beyond institutional redesign. It introduced a new rhythm between belief and power, where sacred language began to echo through the corridors of statecraft in ways that had not been seen before in the modern Muslim world. What followed was a deepening sense of divergence across Islamic societies, where shared theological foundations no longer guaranteed shared interpretations of authority or its limits. Communities that had once been connected through scholarship and tradition began to develop distinct orientations towards leadership, legitimacy, and the role of the clerical class in public life. Some nations pushed one way, while the others another. This transformation also became entangled in a broader regional rivalry that gradually hardened into competing visions of order and identity. The race for sectarian dominance following the revolution between Iran and Saudi Arabia carries on to this very day. The language of doctrine began to overlap with the language of power, and boundaries that were once primarily intellectual took on geopolitical weight. In the very end, what Khomeini set in motion was not only a political structure, but a question that continues to linger across the region. Where does spiritual authority end, and where does governance begin? And in that unresolved space, the answer remains open, carried forward not by certainty, but by the tension between theory and practice, still unfolding like a conversation the world has not yet finished exploring.